You probably think I'm going to start this video with an example of AI stating some absurd falsehood. I'm not going to do that. Yes, AI does hallucinate, but what I'm actually more scared of is AI is getting so good at telling the truth 99% of the time that we don't even try to parse the truth from bullshit. As AI improves in assisting with assignments and essays and tutoring, our brains rust. And like a sad set of weights left outside and not oiled, we lose our meta thinking abilities, our meta learning, and we get our ideas over validated. It's the difference between a river carving its own path and just following the pipes that's been laid for it. And we lose something much worse. We lose the very aspiration to find truth in the first place. I'm not anti-AI. I'm a huge supporter of using it. I have other videos on the channel about how to use it well as a student. But that only works if you have the right truth-seeking foundation underneath. You can't ask AI to build these for you. You have to come up with it yourself. So if you're the type of college freshman who cares about making things right rather than just right, then this video is for you. We're going to dive into how to think like a wanderer, not a sentinel, how to think more systemically instead of categorically, and finally, how to parse truth from bullshit amidst AI. It all starts with thinking like a wanderer instead of a sentinel. And little funny story that embodies this. It was a Saturday afternoon at around like 3:30 p.m. or so, and I found myself debating against 5 Mormons at a bagel shop in College Town. I was the sole atheist, and had you told Aiden from 10 minutes ago that this is what I was going to be doing, I would have laughed. But because I only texted one Mormon to talk, and then they brought a gosh darn army. So anyways, they sit down in their unanimous white shirts and their ties and their name tags like glinting in the sun. And we talked for like 3 hours about all sorts of things, the pointlessness of suffering, the nature of faith, and my personal favorite, why streetlights are proof against God's existence, which is one of my finest theological arguments, if I do say so myself. Anyways, I'm trying to hear them out. I really, really was, to understand why they believe what they do and if there is actually some truth behind it. But one thing became very clear as the conversation went on. They were not trying to hear me out. They were, every answer they gave was preloaded, like a vending machine that dispenses certainty for the low price of not thinking too hard. And I'm not rattling against religious people in general. I have a lot of religious friends, and they wrestle with faith in ways I respect. These Mormons, however, they embodied what I call a sentinel mindset, and they are not in the minority. These two mindsets are dimensions, not boxes. Nobody cartoonishly fits into either one completely. We all carry both, and the balance shifts depending upon the context. The point is recognizing which direction you're leaning to in a given moment. So, what are the mindsets? The sentinel mindset is like a guard defending sacred ground, a fist closed around a coin. Sentinels ask, can I believe this? And they carry a strong sense of purpose and identity rooted in their beliefs, which can make them loyal, structured, and dependable, but it can also make them rigid. They tend to overtrust authority figures, which could be professors, religious texts, political parties. Truth for a sentinel lives in black and white categories. There are hidden assumptions underneath, but there's very little curiosity about where those hidden assumptions come from and how it's affecting their truth seeking. They don't understand their survival instincts, their emotions, and how their group belonging affects the truth. If you've seen my conscious college journey and my article on the college freshman ego stages, you'll recognize this as the cosmic follower stage. Now, here's the trap. Most sentinels think they're wanderers, and they're not, which becomes very clear once we learn what the wanderer mindset actually means. The wanderer asks a different question. What is truth? Not can I defend it or can I believe it, but how can I hold onto it like a bird that landed in my hand? Wanderers accept they don't know much. They don't want to squeeze the bird, squeeze the truth with these rigid beliefs about what is right or wrong. They pay close attention to how self-survival and collective self-survival warp our perception. A wanderer doesn't worship authorities. They learn from them, question them, and hold their teachings lightly, like a map that they might need redrawing once they get to the next ridge. So the wanderer builds maps, the sentinel defends them, which begs the question, why is it so hard to be a wanderer in college? 4 forces push against the wanderer mindset from every angle, which is firstly, mentally, most students are super stressed, emotionally dysregulated, and running on a cocktail of imposter syndrome and comparison. And it's not fully our fault, all right? We aren't taught emotional intelligence in school. We aren't taught stress regulation. Most of society doesn't practice it. So when an AI sounds confident and clean, an exhausted student takes the answer. And the body participates too. Poor sleep, poor nutrition, poor dieting, poor exercise. It makes it very hard for us to seek truth when our nervous system constantly feels like it's in the defensive zone. Check out my stress regulation video up above to learn more about that. So that's the body and mentally, but also culturally, college tilts towards grades, extrinsic motivation, and getting things done in a lot of context. And none of this is any individual student's fault or any professors or any deans. Most of them are wonderful people. We live in a system that has been founded on creating factory workers, not creating critical thinkers. And so this means the incentive structures incentivize finishing the assignment and fast with AI, not questioning whether the assignment framing is right in the first place. And then finally, zooming out even farther, Gen Z and Gen Alpha face a worse financial landscape than even our parents for the first time ever. And so if everyone around us uses AI to get ahead, not using it kind of feels like bringing a butter knife to a knife fight. And the pressure to optimize crowds out the patience to wonder. The hardest part, though, is that being a wanderer hurts. It really does. It means sitting with not knowing. It means losing friends who can't hold complexity. It means growing past old identities into new ones. This last one, resonates with me because when you get into this work, you will experience transformational conflict. You will change, and your old identity will be in conflict with your new. And you have to be able to accept that and love it. So if we're going to walk this trail, we need better tools for the terrain because of that. And one of the most essential is learning to think systemically instead of categorically. So if you've read this far, you might know that, or if you've watched this far, you might know that when I say systems thinking, it's sort of like throwing a dog a bone for me. But it actually wasn't always this way. I remember one of my most prominent high school memories is I was in the barn of one of my old friends, Bob, and we'd bring a mountain of snacks and alcohol to this barn, which were endangered species in my house. So it was always very fun to have those there. And this barn had like a row of battered movie seats scavenged from freaking God knows where. And we just sprawl there for hours watching movies or screaming at each other over Call of Duty kills. And it was on one of these nights that my brother and I got into an argument with one of my friends, Hey Young. And I think it was all about us believing that fat people are fat because they're lazy. And I had the surety about this of a flat earther looking at the ground and saying, "Yep, that's flat." And the reason for that is I grew up in a very nutrition focused household. We basically ate like rabbits, to be honest. And so when Haeyang told me that they're fat because of many reasons, like poor financial situation, hard access to good food, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. If you have less money to buy food, wouldn't that just mean that you don't eat as much? And of course, because Haeyang didn't have the debating skills to really push back against me, I left that argument thinking, I'm a freaking debating god. I have done exactly what all debates are for, which is winning instead of finding the truth. And this, my dear listener, apart from disgusting on my part, is a great example of categorical thinking. I took all fat people, a massive category, and then I just batched them into one box, which was, there's nothing about genetics or food deserts or childhood trauma or hormonal conditions or socioeconomic factors, nothing. It was just all flattened into they're lazy. And I felt smart doing it, which is the scariest part. Here's the problem. Most college students trend towards categorical thinking without realizing it. AI doesn't push us towards systemic thinking because most of society doesn't trend towards systemic thinking. So, and AI is trained on most of society. So, in order to break out of this, we need to know what we're working with. What is categorical thinking and what is systemic thinking? So, categorical thinking begins with objects, which are the building blocks of your reality. Stay with me here. Our brains evolved for speed, not accuracy. It's better to mistake a stick for a snake than to get bitten by the snake and then frickin' die. But in a modern world where most college freshmen aren't surrounded by snakes all the time, this same fast pattern recognition keeps happening. We're flinching at sticks all day long, except now the sticks are college prelims, our friends, our stress. So what are we actually perceiving when we're doing this fast pattern recognition? Well, at the most basic level, we're perceiving objects, distinct forms in consciousness. These are emotions, shades of color, textures, the hum of a fluorescent light, the weight of a backpack strap cutting into your shoulder. Before we slap a label on any of those, they just are. They're not objects. But we can't help ourselves. So we associate objects with concepts, color, chair, sight, and then assume that those categories of objects are features of reality baked into the universe. We don't see ultraviolet light. We don't see what a colorblind student sees. But we assume that our objects that we see are fundamental when they aren't. And this is where categories come in. Is categories are generalized abstractions of groups of objects. Apple, tree, Christian, lazy person. They are very good. They simplify things. They make communication possible. Without categories, ordering coffee would be a 45-minute endeavor where you say, I like a medium dark liquid extracted from a roasted seed, heated to approximately the temperature of mild regret, served in a vessel I can cradle while pretending to study. But without care, categories harden into categorical thinking. The richness gets sanded down, the edges disappear, and all that we're left with is mistaking the map for the territory that it was supposed to represent. Categorical thinking makes us more like sentinels. It's why we might overvalue meritocracy by assuming outcomes somehow reflect effort and intelligence and ignoring the dozen of systemic factors that go into it. It's how we think of love as an emotion we either feel or don't, rather than a participatory phenomenon we practice and build. Check out my why most college relationships fail video in order to see that. And we also think of gender like a light switch rather than a dimmer. I did this to Haeyoung. I took a complex, multidimensional territory, which is why people are fat, and then I just put it into a category, laziness. The category felt clean, the territory was messy, and my sentinel brain chose the clean part every single time. So we need a different way of thinking, something that puts us more into the wanderer mindset right away. That's where maps, territories, and systems come in. Maps are meta representations we make of territories. Think of like a literal map compared to a physical territory. A map, for example, for how to learn effectively, like my spiral knowing video on how to study more effectively by embodying this really deep learning theory I came up with. Now, good maps break us out of categorical thinking by honoring how rich and dimensional territories actually are. But the map can never fully describe the territory. Imagine a map big enough to perfectly reflect and encapsulate the territory of North America. I'm talking every tree, every rock, every river. We actually have a special name for this map. It's called just being North America. So it's a pretty useless map. And also extremely heavy. You'd need a backpack pretty big to carry that. So when maps get sophisticated, they become systems, models describing groups of interdependent dynamic parts that integrate into a larger whole. I know that was a big sentence, but some examples: the college grading system, the application pipeline, climate change, a political election. A system is always made up of smaller parts that make something bigger. Your dorm room is a whole, and it's a part of the dorm building, which is part of the campus, which is part of the university system, which is part of the higher education landscape, which is part of this desolate, barren rock floating through space into God knows what. It's turtles all the way down. One of my favorite maps for thinking more like a wanderer on this line is signal and noise. Signal is the value in a thing, whereas noise is what distracts us from that thing. So imagine you were listening to Bach, and as you were listening outside, you heard bird song. But because in that moment you wanted to listen to Bach, the signal was Bach and the noise was the bird song. But here's the insight. It could have been different. It could have been Bach, which was the noise, and the bird song, which was signal, if you wanted to listen to the bird song. So the context, the relationship we have to it, really determines what is signal and what is noise. And what separates the wanderer from the sentinel is that the wanderer recognizes how the signal-noise relationship is a choice, whereas the sentinel thinks that it is an objective aspect of reality. Pretty cool, huh? So perhaps that would have helped in my conversation with Haeyoung. Wanderers think in maps, territories, and systems, and then sentinels think in the categories and defend them. So without care, AI can push you further and further into the sentinel mindset, which is where we finally get to how you can parse truth from bullshit amidst AI. 3 steps. And they sound simple, but they actually take a lifetime to practice. They're that powerful. So step 1 is to build self-awareness of what being in the wanderer mindset versus the sentinel mindset feels like. Not just intellectually, in the body. The sentinel mindset has a texture to it, a tightening of the chest, a collapsing of the shoulders, a shortening of the breath. Whereas the wanderer mindset feels different. It feels more spacious, more welcoming, a little uncomfortable sometimes, but it's really powerful to start notice how you feel into these when AI gives a response. When it gives you a clean, confident answer, does your body relax into agreement? Or do you lean forward and ask, wait, is this actually right? The wanderer doesn't distrust AI. It really feels into whether it's just thinking categorically or whether it's thinking more systemically. The second step is to train your AI to help you act more like a wanderer. Most people, honestly, they use AI kind of like a vending machine. They just put in the question, then they walk out. But you can train it to challenge you. I feed it my scripts in a writing bot chat that has a whole bunch of my spiritual and science mentors give me feedback on my outline. And not gently. They really batter it in a lot of the time. I ask Claude to tell me, where are my arguments weak? When am I being lazy? Where am I parroting something that I heard somewhere else? And you can do the same. You can tell AI, before you answer, ask me 3 clarifying questions, or give me the strongest counterargument against this idea, or where might I be thinking categorically instead of systemically? Especially useful if your AI has chatted with you for a while. That can be a really powerful but brutal question as well. And the third step is to journal about how you can act more like a wanderer. Not journaling in a Dear Diary sort of sense, but journaling as a practice of catching yourself mid-sentinel mindset. A few questions that you can start with is, where in my life am I thinking categorically when I could be thinking systemically? What self-survival tendencies, fear of looking stupid, or a need for certainty, or a desire to belong, might be shaping what I accept as true? How can I build relationships with people who hold different beliefs but share the wanderer mindset? None of this is easy. The sentinel mindset is often warmer, it's faster, it's more socially rewarded, but every time that we choose the wanderer path, even if it's just in one AI response at 11 p.m., is one step closer towards embodying that wanderer muscle. And the truth, whatever it turns out to be, gets a little closer. It's the mindset that I wish those Mormons had when I talk to them. It's the mindset I wish I had when I was talking to Hayoung about fat people. And no, I didn't start this article with some absurd falsehood. In fact, the opposite is actually true. I've been using the principles of what I've been talking about in this whole video for this script. I think it's working. I mean, could you notice? I'll let you decide whether it did a good or a bad job with helping me in the video script. That's it. If you like this video, you should check out my free college freshman cosmic journaling kit. It's a gamified journaling system to help you embody a lot of the insights in this article, building emotional intelligence, self-understanding, and purpose, so that you can start really using AI to parse truth from bullshit. It's got over 1,000 journaling questions, and you can use it to journal in just 15 minutes a day. So check that out in the description below. As always, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Eat some peanut butter, and bye-bye.